Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I won't lie, I fell asleep twice through this.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss Trancers 2, which came out in 1991, written by Jackson Barr and directed by Charles Band. Iain, if you can remember the synopsis from your dream state, what is the synopsis of Trancers 2?
Well, the story for Trancers 2 kind of carries on from the first movie and continues with Jack Deff's adventure in the past. We find out that in the future that Whistler had a brother and that an operative has been sent back in time to try to stop him. But the future council members also want to try to bring Jack Deff back from the past and have to get him a super secret chamber. But for Jack and this other agent to get together, then past relationships might be reignited.
You know, I'm gonna try something different this time. A minimum of violence.
Jack, the 20th century must be getting to you.
You have no idea. Let's get out of here.
So this is not the first Trancers sequel.
Right.
Although this is the first feature-length sequel.
Yeah.
There was a Trancers that's now been pretty much labelled. Trancers 1.5. There was an anthology movie called Pulse Pounders.
Okay.
Which included Trancers 2, Dungeon Masters 2.
Yeah.
And there was also an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation with Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton.
Nice.
But I think it was under Empire Pictures that was being developed before they went bankrupt, and none of I don't think the film was ever released. I think it was shelved.
Yeah.
And then each of those stories has subsequently been released on DVD or on Full Moon's streaming service. It's the only really real way to watch those movies now.
Yeah.
And then of course it was all these years later they went, let's actually make a Trancers 2. And amazingly, Charles Band managed to get back all of the cast from the original film. And that's the biggest feat in of itself.
Well, I mean, is it? If you're not really doing anything, then it's not really hard to get a bunch of people together again.
Well, the two original writers that wrote the first film and Trancers 1.5 were
Yeah.
no longer able to write this one. They'd already been working on The Rocketeer for Disney.
Oh, nice.
They were working on the Flash TV series. And they were doing other stuff. So, they had, a new writing team or a new writer for this one, which does make it feel slightly different, but I still think it has the same energy and spirit of what was there.
Energy and spirit? Wow, you must have had all the energy and spirit in your movie, because mine was Trancers 2 for me felt what Trancers 1 should have been. Like Trancers 1 was fun, it was silly. We even said that the movie itself felt like it was parodying all of these other sci-fi movies that it was doing. And so it kind of worked on a it's bad, it's good kind of level for me. This movie starts off and just completely throws me a curveball, which I get completely lost with throughout the rest of the movie. And then I just can't take the movie serious. And weirdly enough, I don't want to take the movie serious, but the movie is trying to take itself serious. And I just, mixed feelings. Like I said, we're in the future at the start. McNulty, Artl Fleur, he's talking with another council member about Jack's body and how it's obviously Jack's body has been sat in the future for 6 years,
Right.
while his consciousness has been in the past, and they need to bring Jack from the past to the future so that he can try to kill Whistler's brother. E. Wardo, played by Richard Lynch. He is a guy in the past. Now, like I said, I tried my best to just concentrate with this movie, but I just couldn't work out exactly what was really, really important information and what was just, throwaway lines to keep the script going.
Yeah, I mean, you could try to break this down and go, what's the real sci-fi here? How is this technology working? Or you can just be like, so here's the good guys and here's the bad guys and this is what they want, and go.
Yeah, but this movie tries to expand on what we already know. Now, we know that the consciousness of the person goes back in time.
Yes.
So Jack Deff's body
Is in Phil Death from 1985.
yes. And his proper body is in
Still in the future,
is
but
in the
it's
future,
yeah,
and his consciousness is in
the past.
in the past.
Yes.
Now it's 1991. You know,
It is now,
we got
yeah.
6 years later, and we're told that his body in the future has calcified.
He's been gone too long. His body here in the present is calcified. His only way back to this world is in his new body in the TCL chamber. It's either that or he'll spend the rest of his life in the past.
Okay.
And we're like, okay.
So his body in the future is dying.
Basically, if his consciousness was to come from the past into there,
You could probably bring it back. Yeah.
I assume that he would just probably die or be in an incredible amount of pain.
Yeah.
You know, that body is pretty much just dead now. But they also need to bring Jack to the future because they need him to kill this other guy because they'd already sent an agent to kill Richard Lynch's character. But that agent has failed to call back because they've got their 10-second watches, but on these 10-second watches are these little discs, and these little discs they throw on the floor and they're able to transport things back in time, much like they did with the box in the original movie. Now, like I said, I'm taking fucking careful note of this movie because I'm like, I need to keep track of this stuff. I want to understand it more. And then we end up obviously going back to the past with Jack Death and Lena, played by Helen Hunt, who, I mean, at this point she was on her way to doing Mad About You, I think, early 90s with Carter Burke from Aliens, and so she was starting to find her feet, I suppose, as an actress. And you know, she's still in Trancers too. Because they're driving. I love the driving sequences.
Well, the driving sequences were a little bit better in this one.
Still not driving. They're still not driving.
The biggest takeaway I had from it was I was like, well, he's got dry hair. What happened to dry hair is for squids.
You can't have wet hair for 6 years, Gary. You've got to let it dry.
Well, it tells me that Jack Death's gone soft.
Well, yes, yeah, he has got, well, because there hasn't been any Trancers in his life for 6 years. He's now living as the bodyguard for Hap Ashley, the baseball player from the first movie, you know, and Hap is...
He's now, 5 years sober?
Yeah.
And now he's made all this money, he owns this mansion, and now he's collecting fire trucks?
Oh, God, yes. Now... this is where I started to notice the movie was just going to fill sequences and script with bits of information that seem incredibly massively pointless but will play out later on like a normal movie. But this one was just like, hey, I collect fire trucks. How many? This one. And maybe some little toy ones dotted around to obviously
Reinforce that, yeah.
Oh, God. But you've got to wait for the Trancers to turn up. We're led to understand that Richard Lynch's character, E. Wardo, is running a kind of strange prison juvenile hall for delinquent teens and kids that have obviously come out of mental institutions. And he's wanting to turn them into his own Trancer army.
Yeah.
Now, I may have missed the vital, massive plot point of the movie that explained how Richard Lynch's character got this information. Has he travelled back from the
I believe
future?
he has travelled back from the future. So he's another consciousness that's come back.
Yeah.
And I think there's a throwaway line that says he also brought the seeds back with him.
Right.
It's helping him grow these plants.
Plants, yeah.
Yeah. That's turning them into Trancers when he uses the seeds from these plants.
Yeah, are they turning the plants into pills and giving it to the kids? Right, because obviously we don't really see that bit.
No.
It doesn't explain. But we do see Jeffrey Combs.
Yay!
With a badass kind of 90s art critic goatee.
It certainly screams 90s villain, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. And I wish he'd done so much more. I wish they'd just given him more of a part.
Yeah.
Like, he was a bad guy, but I didn't understand if he was just a bad guy who would turn into a Trancer.
Well, at this point in time, like in interviews with him, he auditioned for Charles Band to be in Ghoulies, and he didn't even get the part.
Oh,
they were just like,
man.
no, sorry, you're not good enough for this.
What? This fucking Jeffrey
I know, but then he auditioned again, and then he got Reanimator,
Right, yeah.
and then he got this role,
Yeah.
and, you know, and this was the very beginning of his relationship with Full Moon Pictures.
I mean-
Charles Band, and everything else would come after.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they didn't really know how to utilize him in this.
I can understand that because, in fairness, Richard Lynch is a big Richard Lynch has got some notable roles. I can't remember all of them, but he's been in a lot of horror movies. I remember.
So he was a bigger name at this time.
He was the bigger name, but the way they utilize Richard Lynch is really boring and useless. He rarely turns up. Sometimes he's on a TV screen, you know.
Well, yeah, they've got all these TV monitors fed throughout this hospital, so he's
Yeah.
just constantly monologuing.
And it's really, it just doesn't make any sense. It's not even like imposing or anything. It's just like him reading a script.
It's droll, isn't it?
It is droll. And like Jeffrey Combs has just stood there in the background saying nothing, and I'm like, he would have been so much better as that head.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and then you could maybe had Rich Lynch turn up later, but they're running this mental institution, and the agent from the future is locked in there. And it turns out that the agent from the future is Alice Death, Jack's wife, played by Megan Ward. Megan Ward, I remember from California Man and Joe's Apartment, you know, very attractive 90s actress, you know. But like I said, I'm fucking confused with this movie.
Special Agent Alice Stillwell.
Alice Stillwell. Jack Death's wife? How can you send her back? She was killed in a Trancer fight 6.5 years ago.
We sent a technician back to the day before her death, but something went wrong. She failed to tap back for the TCL chamber.
Because they explain it to us that obviously in the first movie, Jack was trying to find Whistler because Whistler had this trance army and he'd killed his wife. And we obviously get from the second movie that his wife was a Trancer hunter. Now, these Trancer hunters live by a code. You know, it's the job over everything else.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, wow, that's fucking some serious fucking dedication there. But his wife died in the future. And we're told that a technician...
We don't know that she died in the future. All we know is that she's dead.
Okay.
Alice Stillwell. Jack Death's wife? How can you send her back? She was killed in a Trancer fight 6.5 years ago.
We've done this dance before the camera's turned on, so I'm trying to hold back. Okay, but she's dead in the future, right?
All we know is she's dead.
Okay, but she's definitely dead in the future. She's not dead in 1985. But a technician, we're told that a technician went back in time and took her consciousness, to send back to 1991. So he's already gone back in time once, and then sent the consciousness back again, so that she can kill Wardo. But she's been captured because her ancestor, that she's taken over the body of, is mentally deranged and was locked up. And that's how she's ended up working with Jeffrey Combs. But she's had all of her stuff taken off her. And so Megan Ward has these fucking conversational pieces with this guy called Rabbit.
I really started to like Rabbit.
That's how bad this movie is! So did I!
I mean, he was absolutely useless character. Are you an orderly here, or are you a patient in here?
Oh, no.
I can't quite tell.
He does explain at one point that he's not a patient. No, they can't lock him up. He's not mad. Ha ha ha.
Me? Guess not. I'm a professional. I've been around mentally ill people all my life. I speak their language.
I was like, oh my god, like...
But man, I mean, he's good with the ladies, you know, like in the middle of the night. He's got this other nurse coming in, they're sharing the vodka.
And Megan Ward goes out of her way to use the pills that she's found to drop in the drinks to knock Pearl out and allow Rabbit to be distracted so that she can get her watch.
There is no excuse for this. I'm warning you.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
At the exact same time, Jack has gotten his watch from Artl Fleur, who's transported back in time. But he's transported back in time to his ancestor. Now, if you remember from the first movie, his ancestor was a little girl. 6 years later, she's now a teenager. I thought it was amazing that just at one point, Jack Def in this movie is just surrounded by women.
Right, well, yeah, pretty much, yeah. And he's got a Hap Ashby there occasionally, but
occasionally, perhaps fucking useless. You know, he's got Helen Hunt, he's got Artl Fleur as this teenage girl who brings him his watch, and they have this disc, and it's a stupid scene.
I'm just gonna point out there is a sequence when with Artl Fleur back in the future,
right,
where he's just like, oh great, I'm gonna go back into my ancestor again, a teenage girl, and he grabs his crotch, and then he moves his hand from his crotch to his mouth or to his nose.
Yeah,
I was just like,
You don't know what it was like the last time, waking up in the body of a 9-year-old girl.
Look, we're sending you back to 1991. Your ancestor will be 15 now.
And that's supposed to make me feel better? Guys are going to try and get in my pants.
But when he's back in that body,
yeah,
it's a little bit later on, the girl that he's in is starting to wear makeup.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, what's going on here, McNulty?
I know!
You seem way too comfortable now in this body.
Well, this is it. Once Artl Fleur travels back, you never see him for the rest of the movie. It's now the girl. It's like we didn't have the money to even afford Artl Fleur anymore.
I'm just glad they brought, again, the same actress back from the first one.
Is it what is the teenage girl?
The same actress from the first one.
Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. But they dropped this disc. So Jack has dropped his disc on the front lawn of his mansion, and Megan Ward's character has put her disc down in a barn, and they've sent this chamber back. Now, this chamber is vital to the fucking story. After everything we've just talked over, it's vital to the story because the ancestor has to get into the chamber, and that chamber then sends them back to the future so that they don't need to get in their body anymore. So their body is Soylent Greened, I suppose. You know, they just chop it up and use it for food. You know, these unconscious bodies.
It's pretty terrible when you're trying to think of like the consciousness that was in the body that they jumped back into.
Yeah, it's now just completely lost to the void.
Yeah.
I told you, I got completely lost with this fucking movie. I got lost with his wife. I don't even want to understand how Jack's shit works.
How can you get lost? It's about a time-traveling cop that's shooting zombies.
Because he wasn't time-traveling in this one. He stays in 1991. It's fucking
it's everybody else who's time-traveling.
It's everybody else who's time-traveling. Because the chamber gets separated now. The door goes to one location, and the chamber goes to the barn with Alice. And like I said, the Trancers start to turn up. It's so fucking predictable. This one lone gardener comes in, and Hap comes out to see him, and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And the guy just turns around, and he's got a little bit more detail on his face with the veins popping.
Yeah, the Trancer makeup looks much better this time around.
And then Jack Def comes driving around the corner in a golf buggy with a gun.
Go.
Like, there's a lot more shooting in this movie.
There's a hell of a lot more shooting.
A lot more shooting in this movie.
Yeah, it looks like they've got blood squibs now as well. They're popping off. But even though there's several times when Jack Def is shooting the Trancers, like 3 times, and they only get one blood explosion.
You'd think he'd be a better shot.
Right.
A fucking headshot each time, but no, he's like, ba 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 bang.
Christ.
God, what does it mean?
It means it's a bad day to go shopping for a new house, Lena.
So we follow Jack after the first Trancer attack when he's trying to investigate a robbery of the gardener equipment that was stolen. And when he turns up there, it turns out that all these people are Trancers as well. And we get the return of the amazing 10-second watch.
Yay!
You know, it's just brilliant, just the way Jack just takes down all these Trancers.
It's that moment where he gets wedged up against the wall with a forklift truck, and he does the slow-mo elbow drop to break that wood. I'm like, can't he just push that wood? Is that wood, bolted down onto there?
I mean, is it heavier if it's in time travel?
I don't know. It's just, how do we make him look cool?
Like I was loving this sequence with him slowing down time and taking out these Trancers, but it was when they reused it that I got really a bit confused, because we cut to Alice at her barn with the chamber, and some of the doctors are coming out to find her because they want to capture her again. And so she uses her 10-second watch to escape from the barn. And it's just amazing because, so everything is slowed down, yeah? Everything is slowed down. She's 10 seconds, everything's slowed down. The birds have stopped moving, the sun stopped moving, the people have stopped moving. And as soon as they stop moving, they drop whatever they're holding. Yeah. And that falls at normal speed.
Yeah. Drops his walkie-talkie thing, she drops her clipboard.
And then, like, in the previous sequence, when Jack had run past the Trancers had kind of watched him go past, so that when his 10-second ended, they turned. But in Alice's one, she has to scream to get the attention of the doctors and nurses to say, "Hey, look, I'm over here. Don't go in the barn."
Right, I know that was so confusing. Why she did that? I was like, what?
Yeah, she purposely brought them away from the barn because she wanted to keep the chamber. But this ends up in her being captured by Richard Lynch's character, and he's basically says to Jeffrey Combs, you know, I want her for my special time. And I'm like, oh, dude, could you just not say you just want to, like, you either want to rape her or turn her into a trancer? It's a lot more creepier if you just say you want her for yourself.
Shall we send her back to the asylum?
No, not the asylum. This is a special patient. She needs special care.
But she's being carted out on a bed, and Jack turns up and just rescues her.
Well, he doesn't just rescue her, he rescues her and the stretcher that she's on.
That was amazing.
He runs with her all the way to the car and props her up, and then takes off high speed.
Oh god!
And then I mean that there is one of my favourite moments in the film. Just the shot of her on this board, just screaming as Jack Deft takes off. But it's the conversation that they have afterwards, where he's just like, "You're my wife. You know, we were both sent back in time, and you know, and yeah, I'm in my ancestor's body. Although you should recognise him, he looks exactly the same."
yeah.
And she's
well,
like,
she has that picture. I don't know why she has a picture that she has to meet up with her husband in the past.
And she's like, "Oh, Jack Deft, the only man I ever slept with." And then she passes out, and he looks at her, or he may as well just look at the camera and go, "Wasn't that bad?" He drives off again. I was like, oh my.
Oh my God, Jack, it is you. The only man I ever had sex with.
Wasn't that bad?
I mean, there's lots of really silly moments in the film like that. And now some of the one-liners land, and some of them you just go, what?
Oh, this whole next section of the movie this is where I started to fall asleep.
I found it as well, and it was mostly the Hap Ashby stuff, especially when, you know, they've got the groceries turning up and they think he's a trancer, and they, you know, the box spills out and the alcohol falls over, and they're like, "Oh, you've been off the wagon." Now he's drinking again.
He's drinking again because he knows he's going to be killed by these trancers, because now you got these.
He ends up leaving them, and he ends up going back and trying to play baseball with the homeless guys again.
But Gary, you forgot about the exploding ham.
I definitely didn't.
Like, what kind of fucking movie has an exploding fucking ham in it?
A good one.
Hey, Jack, what's with this ham? It's stuffed like a turkey.
And like this whole next section as well, it just revolves around, like I said, this is where I started to get really majorly confused as well, where Jack is trying to keep distance from his wife, Megan Ward, who's in love with him, because to her it's still fresh. Their relation, they've only just met to her because she's still a freshling agent. Where Jack is the older version and has been married, you know, they've had this relationship and she's died, and he's been in the past for fucking 6 years. So he's trying to keep her at bay, while Megan Ward is trying to pretty much come on to him all the time. He also is still in love with Lena, Helen Hunt character, who...
Well, at the start of the film, she was like, right, house, kids, now.
Yeah, and she walks in like twice in a row. She walks in on Alice and Jack making out, and she's like, "You son of a bitch!" And I'm just like, Jack, you are so fucking smooth. No way, no normal man would be able to manage this kind of relationship, let alone be able to convince Helen Hunt's character, because he does. He convinces her that it's all okay for me to make out with my wife from the future, because when she goes back, she's going to die. And it doesn't even really build up to kind of a dramatic ending, does it?
Not really. It feels really forced, but you're just like, but it with the setup, you're just like, it's bound to happen. You've got to go through these beats.
They capture Lena, and they plan to kill Lena and turn her into a Trancer. And the Trancers that we've seen up to this stage have been pretty fucking useless. Even Megan Ward, Alice's character, can fucking shoot the shit out of them. She saves like Jack like twice, I think.
Yeah.
And they break into the mental ward, and as they're all trying to escape, because even Rabbit now, he's trying to help out.
Well, it's because they're about to lobotomize him and turn him into a Trancer as well. And of course, he knows what's going on. So, yeah.
and he doesn't want to be a Trancer. But when he dies, it was really quite sad.
It was so sudden and brutal, you know. He just steps out from
behind.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you said, yeah, I knew it was coming, that they couldn't keep this character alive because he's completely pointless. But then when it did happen, I was like, oh man, I wish you had this new character kind of brought some life back into this movie, where I'm not saying that the older characters didn't. They weren't keeping my attention going, especially towards this final shootout, which is just going to go one way, and all the Trancers are fucking killed. Jeffrey Combs is shot down in
Well, I mean, it's such a ridiculous sequence where they're trapped in this barn, they're completely surrounded.
Oh, I just remembered the barn,
and so the Trancers outside decide to set this truck on fire and push it into the barn. Yet then Jack and company in the barn have got this other
tractor,
another tractor, and this great big sled behind it that they set on automatic to drive out of this burning barn, and they pop up from behind and manage to shoot all the Trancers. I was like, what is that thing you're in made of? Is it like tinfoil? Because you see all these lovely little sparks coming off it as bullets are apparently hitting it.
That's it. It's the worst kind of cover you could ever have, is that trailer. Because it's pulling out. The Trancers could have just gone bang, bang.
I mean, it was going so slowly anyway.
It was. Well, I didn't know if that was bullet time.
Oh, right, yeah. But maybe they hit the 10-second watch, both of them.
Both of the 20 seconds.
So all these Trancers are getting killed. Yeah, Jeffrey Combs is annihilated. But then, there's so many Trancers, though, Jack and Co are doomed.
Yeah.
But then Hap Ashby turns up in his fire truck with the hose, and all the Trancers are like, oh no, let's run away. I'm like, you're supposed to be zombies, you're supposed to be under his control. How are they running away? Where are they going? Where did they go after this?
Dude, I don't know.
I need a Trancers 2.5 where we follow the lives of the Trancers that ran away at the end of this film.
Because the fire truck comes up, and I'm like, well, luckily Hap collected a fire truck, and they come up with the idea now that, well, after killing Richard Lynch's character, they don't even shoot him, they throw a pitchfork at him.
It's proper fork.
And they realise now that he's dead, there's no point, anybody going back in time to stop him. So, Jack, do you want to go back to the future? And Jack's like, no, I want to stay here. And he kind of explains to Alice basically what's going to happen. Look, you need to get in the chamber and go back to the future, because in the future you're dead. We've married, we've had a life, but that's over now, and I'm going to stay here.
The biggest complication I find with this is that her consciousness is in this host body, and the
Yeah.
consciousness of the body that she's in will now be gone completely when this body and this consciousness goes to the future now.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not very nice.
No.
But at the same time, I was thinking, now, they wanted to do that with Jack.
Yeah.
And not just bring his consciousness back into his new body, but bring him and his body here.
Yeah.
He won't exist in the future anymore because past ancestor still needs to have a child, which will cause the family tree to continue.
Yes. Now, like I said, from the way I understand it, is that if Jack Death in the past had gone into the chamber, when he'd come to the future, he would be Jack Death now. Phil would stop to exist, to exist, and the Jack Death's body would cease to exist.
In theory, yeah.
In theory, him stepping into the chamber would create a whole new timeline.
Yes.
That would be the one that they follow now. Phil, like you said, Phil would die and Jack Death would die, but this now new present Jack Death would be a combination of both of them from the past. It's, like I said, it's fucking Endgame all over again. But they don't. They decide to send Alice back to the future, and so thus she steps into the chamber and comes back to the future, and then Jack stays in the past in love with Lena because that's where his heart really lies.
And they all lived happily ever after?
Yeah, the end.
Oh, no, wait, there's still like 4 more movies.
Well, I hope they're fucking better than this one.
Well, Ian, what were your favourite scenes from this one?
Man, my favourite scenes were just a lot of the silly scenes. Like the golf cart shooting at the beginning. Like whenever any of the Trancers really turned up, it was just fun. It took me back to what the first movie was. It was just a fun B-movie sci-fi. The 10-second watch stuff is just brilliant. Like I said, I sat there trying to work out how things can still drop in normal speed if you've stopped and slowed everything down. Like, does that actually happen? Like, can objects just continue to move? But like bullets don't. Like, you have to fire project. I don't know. Jeffrey Combs. If you see Jeffrey Combs' face, he just looks like a really angry art critic with that goatee. Richard Lynch. He's fun, but he's not utilized well enough in this movie. I think that was always a problem with maybe some of his acting career. That's why his parts are just not as well known as maybe other actors. He's never really utilized really well. In this, as the bad guy, it wasn't even really a threat. Like in the first one with Whistler, he had that imposing look, and you just felt like creeped out. Richard Lynch just not in it enough to make me feel like that. Helen Hunt's fun, and Megan Ward, the two of them bickering over Jack. They're like his speech. I did really like his speech to Helen Hunt, trying to justify his kind of adultery. Otherwise, then, no.
Yeah. This ham is packed like a turkey.
God,
What a line. What a line. And then, of course, like, the moment he realizes, he grabs the ham and throws it out the window and it explodes. I was just like, that's great. And there's a line later where he's just like, next time somebody passes you an exploding ham, I'll pass you the mustard. Just like, it's great. It's like, of all the dialogue you expect to hear in a film.
Exactly. But, like, was there TNT in that ham?
Hell,
Did they
who
just,
knows?
like, spark? Like,
was it a bomb from the future? Because they can send things back? I love the sequence where he blasts a bunch of the Trancers away, and he turns to these 2 old ladies. He says, "Don't worry, they're biodegradable." It's just like, what?
Don't worry, ladies. They're biodegradable.
A small bit of trivia here for you as well. Those 2 old ladies.
yeah.
That was Charles Band's mother and mother-in-law.
I kind of had a feeling that that's who they were, like somebody at least family related.
Yeah, well, there was lots of family members in here. At one point, Charles Band's dad and Helen Hunt's dad are the 2 hobos queuing up for the hot dogs, asking for mustard and chili sauce.
Oh God, yeah, that's how he gets captured because they keep taking the hobos. Like, what were they using the hobos for? They were turning the hobos into
a callback
Trancers?
to the first one.
Oh God.
I I loved Jack Death riding off with his wife in the stretcher in the passenger seat of the car. It's like, that's just insane and great. Just really memorable. And yeah, the line afterwards, the only man I ever had sex with, it wasn't that bad. I'm sure there's more. You know, like, it's always great to see Artl Fleur in the minor role as McNulty, and the actress that's playing him does a good job of keeping the quirks and the tics of the character.
Yeah, yeah.
But Iain, do you recommend Trancers 2?
I really don't want to. I really can't. I want to. Part of me is just like, it goes hand in hand with the first movie, but it doesn't. Like, sometimes you capture lightning in a bottle. Sometimes you fart in a can, you know. It depends on which one you're really up for that day. And I was excited for Trancers 2 because I wanted more of Jack Death. But I just feel that the writers were like, oh, you know, we gotta at least try to make this film a success. So we're gonna try to expand more on what was in the first one. But it's all fictional, it's all farcical, and so the more you try to explain it, the more you try to understand it, the more it doesn't make any sense, and the more you have to just put your hands up and go, ha, it's fun. But I can't do that. I'm sorry, I can't. I have to understand it myself to enjoy it, you know. And just, there was no real villain in this movie. There was no real threat in this movie. Some of the real only seriousness of this movie comes when he's got to deal with his future wife with Helen Hunt and his future past wife with Megan Ward. And and even then they made jokes out of it, so it just wasn't even serious. It was funny. And then if you've got through Trancers 1 and you're like, you know what, I need to see it, watch it, but try not to understand it, because you won't.
Yeah, I'm going to find it really difficult to recommend Trancers 2. And in all honesty, I can only recommend this one to those of you that really enjoyed the first Trancers movie. And even then, you might be a little disappointed with this late sequel. Trancers 2, The Return of Jack Death, seems to have lost some of the charm and some of the wit that made the original so fun. But that's not saying this one is bad. It just feels lacking.
Yeah.
The main draw for me for Trancers 2 is the cast, and it's great to see so many cast members return for the sequel, along, you know, with horror genre greats such as Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs, who unfortunately feel wasted here.
Yeah.
Of course, Tim Thomerson absolutely nails the role of Jack Death, and it's worth watching just to see how this story all plays out, as the cast make this entertaining and a fun experience. Of course, the film looks cheap and cheerful, with silly-looking props and cheap sci-fi settings, but the Trancer makeup and the blood squib effects were pretty decent this time. It has a good, fast-paced 90 minutes of cheesy lines and humour, gun shootouts and chases, and over-the-top villainy and action, and yeah, it's not great. But if you've got the time, you could do far worse. As time waits for no man unless his name is Jack Death. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
God damn it, McNulty. The next time someone hands you an exploding ham, I'm gonna pass the mustard.